I'm gonna start that over. Hi guys, I'm Amy. Welcome back to my channel. I have another reading wrap up for you guys. This one should be pretty quick since I've talked about some of these books in previous videos, but if you're interested to see the last 5 or 6 books that I've recently read, then go ahead and keep on watching. The first book I'm just going to mention very briefly because I talked about it in a video in depth recently is The Dead Avocado by Elaine Dundee. This was my NYRB pick for the Indie Press Project in April, and I have a whole video where I talk and go to great lengths in which I discuss this book. I will link that up here for you guys if you haven't seen it, but I really enjoyed it, and if you want to know more, you should go check that video out. Cool? Cool. The next 2 books that I'm going to talk about are romance novels that I have read recently from the same series. The first of which that I finished was The Girl with the Sweetest Secret by Bettina Kron. This is the second book in the Sin and Sensibility series. I believe there's only 3. I think I've read all of them now. The first of which was about a Baumgarten sister, the eldest one, Daisy, and the second one follows her next youngest sister, Frankie, and it's about Frankie getting to know Reynard Bolton, who is known as the Fox. He's a character that you see in the first book, A Good Day to Marry a Duke, and Reynard has a reputation for knowing everyone's dirty little secrets, and that maybe he's a little bit untrustworthy, and this is about what happens between Frankie and Reynard, but also the third youngest Baumgarten sister, Cece. I really enjoyed this series. I thought it was, this book, I thought it was a lot of fun. I would recommend it. I would say as far as sexy rating, it's on the lower end of things. It's not overtly graphic. I don't know if that's the right word or not compared to a lot of romance novels, but I thought the story was very sweet and I enjoyed all the characters. And then I also read the third and final book in this series, Anyone But a Duke, and this follows the youngest sister, Sarah. She loves animals. She is currently taking care of, what's it called? I can't remember, this estate castle that Daisy's husband's brother is the Duke of, but they do believe that the Duke is dead. But when this very wild looking exotic man shows up, come to find out maybe the Duke is not dead like everyone thought he was. And this is about Sarah's relationship with Arthur and some kind of sketchy things going on around the town that they get involved in. Again, really enjoyed it. Definitely recommend it. This was a very sweet romance series that takes place in the 1890s, so a little bit of a different time frame compared to when I read, or compared to a lot of romance novels that I read. So if those sound at all interesting to you, they're sweet, they're fun, they're quick, I would recommend them. I also got around to continuing on in a series, and that was with The Chronicles of Secret, Riven, Keeper of Tales Trilogy, Book 2 by Ronlyn Deming. The Mapmaker's War was the first book in this series that completely caught me off guard and I absolutely adored and have recently talked about in a video. I'll link that up here for you guys if you're interested. But what I find really interesting about this series is this book, the second book in the series, takes place 1,000 years after the Mapmaker's War. So we have none of the same characters, for obvious reasons, from the first book. And we are following a young girl, her name is Secret Riven, that has some very interesting physical features. She has one blue eye and one brown eye, and she has very dark hair, and she doesn't look like the other people in her hometown. And her mother is this really, really gifted translator because she has this magical ability, you could say, that she understands every language and can translate any language into any other language. And so she's a very sought after translator. And Secret Riven also begins to learn that she can communicate with animals and plants. And we watch as Secret grows up and this really interesting relationship she has with her family, and the fact that while she's a young girl, she doesn't speak at all. I really, really enjoyed this book. It was an absolutely wonderful companion to the Mapmaker's War. I'm dying to get my hands on the third book, which continues to follow Secret Riven, and I really do recommend this series. It is fantasy. There are fantasy components, but it is far more quiet, I would say, in that regard concerning magic and those type of things, but you do see the fantasy components of it. But it's also so much about Secret Riven and her struggles and her family dynamics and her just trying to figure things out, especially as a young girl, because I believe we follow her from about the age of 4 to 18-ish. I don't have the third one on my shelves, but I cannot wait to get it and read it. I cannot recommend these books enough. I think Deming is a really incredible author, and these books I've never heard anybody talk about before, and I think they are very underrated for that reason. If there are any of you watching who have watched me for years now, you will know that in 2017 I read Shop Girl by Steve Martin and absolutely fell in love with it. And I have had several of his other works on my shelves since then, and I haven't picked any of them up. And then I finally did. So I decided to pick up The Pleasure of My Company by Steve Martin. Now, I have to say I find this very interesting because this is called a novel. It's a very short novel. It's 163 pages, whereas Shop Girl is considered a novella and it's 130. So when does a book become a novel? That's a very interesting discussion that I would love to have with you guys in the comments. But in this story, we are following a late 20s, early 30s man by the name of Daniel, who you discover that he has some fairly severe mental health struggles, especially along the lines of OCD. He has these compulsions. He has the inability to step off of a curb due to his fear, so he takes these really strange roundabout routes to get to places like Rite Aid. And he has a therapist who comes to his house twice a week for appointments, but other than that, he doesn't have a job because he can't keep a job down due to his neuroses, and he also has convinced himself that he's in love with this realtor who he sees across the street trying to sell this house, and builds this up in his head, and he's just kind of an awkward, different gentleman. And this story really takes off when his grandmother passes away, and she was largely responsible for sending him money so that he could live. He is getting state assistance, but without her money, life will be much harder for him. And the second half of this book, I think, is where the real story is. The first half, Martin spends a lot of time just really giving us a good idea of what type of person Martin is. He's just a very strange man who doesn't interact with people very well, but he's also incredibly intelligent, and that just makes for this really interesting dynamic in his interactions with other people. And I have to say, I think to some degree, I mentioned this in the vlog in which I read this book, you need to suspend disbelief for a little bit, especially in regards to his relationship with his therapist. But if you can do that, I think this is a really sweet story. I think it, once again, like Shop Girl, really gives a very realistic view of what mental health can be, or what it's not, and the different ways that it manifests. I really, really liked it, and I was really nervous to read it, and I think this is one of those books I like it more now that I've spent more time away from it, because initially while I was reading it, I read this in like one sitting, I'm fairly certain. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. This is kind of odd, it's strange, and it is. It is odd, it is strange, it's very Steve Martin-esque. So if you have read something else by him, then I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I will say I enjoyed Shop Girl more from what I remember of reading, from what I remember about reading Shop Girl, and maybe I need to revisit it because it has been so many years now. But overall, this was a success for me, a very quirky, odd story that if you can suspend your disbelief for just a little bit, I think you will enjoy it. And the last book I have to share with you guys is 3 Things About Elsie by Joanna Cannon. This is her second book, her debut, The Trouble with Goats and Sheep. I read 2 summers ago and freaking loved it. It was an incredible book, and I was very, very excited to get to this. And I have to say, Joanna Cannon is consistent in her writing, and I love her writing. I think it's sublime. I love her description. It really brings very strong, vivid images to my mind, unlike a lot of authors. I just really get a sense of place and what she's trying to get at, for lack of a better phrasing. I really do love her writing. And in this story, if you don't know, we are, our main character, let me start that sentence over, is Florence Claiborne. She's 84 and she lives in a retirement community, and one day this gentleman shows up who she believes is someone from her past who she thought died. And it's her and her best friend Elsie and another gentleman who then go out to try and figure out if that's the case, what's actually true. And it doesn't take a lot for the reader to realize that Flo is maybe not as reliable as you would like your narrator to be. And I think for that reason, I didn't connect as well with this story as I did with The Trouble with Goats and Sheep. I also found the mystery of all of it a little bit too easy to piece together. It all seemed a little bit too obvious for me, but I have to say that my biggest gripe with this book is that everyone is perfectly connected and everything is tied up with this perfect little bow. And I didn't need that. I didn't find that necessary. I think that worked in The Trouble with Goats and Sheep because that was about a neighborhood, whereas this is about a variety of different characters. And it made this book too unbelievable for me. I will say that her discussion and her portrayal of the elderly and aging and how they are treated by other people is well done. It makes for an interesting discussion. I think there needs to be more books like this where it really brings the elderly to the forefront and the fact that they are still people and that it's not okay to treat them like they're not people or that they're incapable of making decisions on their own. But in general, this book was just okay for me. The writing, like I said, phenomenal. I have no complaints about her writing, but the overall story just didn't work. And I was disappointed by that, obviously, because I love The Trouble with Goats and Sheep so much. Obviously, let me say obviously for a second time, I will continue to buy and read her books as they continue to come out. I think her writing style is amazing. It really works for me. Her writing is very, very image heavy, and I really get a clear picture in my mind of what I believe she's trying to say, and I love that. But Three Things About Elsie was not nearly as good as her first, but if this sounds interesting to you, definitely check it out. If you like a book that's got some mystery to it, some maybe not so reliable characters, this could totally be your thing. And if anything, you can just enjoy her beautiful writing. All right, guys, there you go. There is my reading wrap up for you. If you guys have read any of these books, as usual, let me know what your thoughts were. If you want to read them now, let me know that too. But thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it so much. You guys are the best. And if you guys like this video, please like it. And if you loved it, please subscribe, and we will see you in my next video. Happy reading.